We're up north, on the coast, by the sea. We're not a capital. We're not on the main road. Sometimes it rains for a week. Sometimes it snows. It's taken us 400 years to build our city, and we're still working on it. We don't make it easy on ourselves, but we think we're on to something good.
Hi, my name is Magnus Hallberg and I am the event director at Gothenburg & Co., which is the destination company in Gothenburg, Sweden. With me today in the studio, I have my colleague Filip.
Hello, my name is Filip Eklund and I'm a sustainability specialist.
For 6 years in a row, Gothenburg has been named the most sustainable destination by the Global Destinations Sustainability Movement. And since many years back, event has played a very important role for Gothenburg in our effort to position ourselves as one of the most sustainable destinations and to create actual change. Because as we all know, to keep doing business the old way is not the way for the future. We know that the ongoing climate challenge makes us do things or forces us to do things in a different way. We cannot go on in the same way as we have. Therefore, our brand new vision for Gothenburg is Sustainable Destination by 2030. This is what we aim for in our daily work. This is what we focus on when we go to work every day, and everything we do is supposed to support this. Philip.
Yeah, so what we're going to talk about today is about how we use the events as change makers and test beds in order to create a more sustainable city. We're going to start out today with showing you a short movie about our destination and how we use events. So enjoy.
Movie time.
"30 years ago, Gothenburg decided to become one of the best event cities in Europe. We decided to treat events as a unique resource and to give organizers all the support that they can possibly need. Today, we are a world leader in sustainable events and a first choice for organizers looking for a city where everything is close, where you get a warm welcome, and where events are designed to leave a legacy. To us, your event is not important. It is vital."
Gothenburg may not be the largest city in the world. Still, the cinema culture here is strong and we're one of the biggest film festivals in Europe. Every year, we screen 450 films from 80 countries with an attendance of 160,000 people. In fact, we've grown too big to fit in just the cinemas, so we also use university buildings, the library, and even a shopping mall. We like to try new locations, and this summer we're moving into the Garden Society. Thanks to our volunteers, our collaboration with the city and all our partners, we keep on pushing the limits of what a film festival can be.
Gothenburg is an event city. Our job is to help things run safely. To work close with event organizers comes naturally. Over the years, we had events in all parts of the city. We had horse racing on the boulevard, 19 half marathons and 35,000 children from all over the world playing football in the heart of the city. Most things can be done, and we're happy to be a part of it.
As a show jumper, what it all boils down to is clearing 14 obstacles as fast as you can, without making any mistakes. It's all over in a minute, sometimes less. You need to be able to find your focus, count every step, and get rid of distractions. To be able to walk from the hotel to the arena, to have my horses just minutes away. All of that makes it easier to do what I'm here for. To be the fastest rider and to win.
I'm a hockey player. I've been doing this for 20 years now. When I was a kid, my father used to take me and my brother to see Frölunda at Scandinavia. That's where it all started. Since then, I've been to the NHL and back. The fans in Gothenburg, there's nothing like them really. They had my back since day one, and you can tell there's a huge love for the sport. Every time there's a game, hockey, football, whatever, it's like the whole city turns up to cheer. This is home.
So, Philip, in the film, our mayor talks about legacy and that every event is designed to leave a legacy. What does she mean with that?
Legacy is kind of a complex word in terms of events. However, I would say that balance is a key word in terms of legacy, and I think we've known for quite a while that events is actually good for the economy of the city. But what's important now in terms of a climate crisis happening and ongoing, I think it's important to have balance in the legacy. And what we are working with right now, and which is very important, is to actually balance the cost and the impacts from the events. And what we are aiming for is to create as much value as possible without the negative costs. So let me give you an example there. For example, you have a great event giving enormous amount of value and economy to the city. However, you serve the Atlantic cod, and as a negative impact from the event, the cod gets fished out. That's not what we aim for here. So what we need to do is to actually see all those aspects of doing events and try to get a great value without the negative impact. And I think that's all about what events are all about in this case.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about challenges, which challenges has been the greatest one to address out of a sustainability perspective?
Sustainability is such a broad word. I think legacy is it puts the perfect word on it, and the challenge is to see sustainability out of a broad perspective. And I think in some terms, in order to learn what sustainability is and what we need to do, it's about seeing the whole picture. And for to name one practical example, I would say that clean energy is something that we've been working on a lot in Gothenburg, and all premises and venues where we actually do events is able to use clean energy and renewable sources, which is amazing. Another thing that is quite challenging in the city festival kind of environment is to work with disposable free events. Events, we know for a fact that it's a lot of trash, it's a lot of waste, and once you have that in the city center, it's a lot of transportation and a lot of costs to it as well. So that would also be something that's kind of a challenge. But we've been developing projects to solve that matter. But I would say setting goals is one of the most important things to do here. In order to work.
I agree. And you mentioned food. You mentioned the cod in the Atlantic that we love so much here on the west coast in Sweden. And Gothenburg is a very well-known food and beverage destination. We have our seafood, of course, since we are located right on the sea or right on the coast. And we are also known more or less as the beer capital in Sweden.
Yeah. Yeah, food is super interesting and something that's what every person meet once they come to an event. You see the food, and it also means that the food carries a symbol in itself. For example, if you only serve meat, for example, that would tell you something about how you work with sustainability. So for sure, I think it's a very important perspective, and to mention the local breweries, that's also a way to let them into the events. That's also a way to get an image of the city and to show all the visitors, which is our visitors and our citizens, to show them that this is something that we like. So it's super important, and we've been working on to put more local beverages and food on the festivals. But it's also, I think, in terms of food, I think organic is one thing that is super important, and in terms of sea food, MSC is of course an important mark that kind of makes sure that it's not fished out, for example. And local, I think that's something that you need to lift up even more. I think in terms of transportation, for example, local is super important.
Yeah.
If you transport all the beers, for example, imported, which wasn't unusual just up to for a few years ago, then it's a lot of transportation connected just to the beer, for example. And I think another important thing in terms of food that you need to handle is also the food waste. In international perspective, I think a third of all the food that gets grown is actually thrown away.
Yeah.
So it's super important also here to work actively to reduce the waste and also communicate about it, because what we do with the events and the food is actually to inspire and communicate to our visitors to act on whatever we do on the events back at home. So that's, I think, to connect to what I spoke about early on as a change maker. What we do with the food on the event gets something that inspires people.
That's true. And we also have, here we have a picture of a city festival that is famous in Gothenburg called Way Out West. And they took some quite dramatic decisions some years back.
For sure.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Absolutely, and I think vegetarian, we didn't really connect to that earlier, but I think using less meat as a part of the food, the whole food industry is super important, and that's something you know in an international perspective and both local perspective. And we've been working with vegetarian for quite some time in a lot of events that we have. And you can take different approaches here, and I think there are a few interesting approaches. I would like to mention on one of our absolute biggest culture festivals, we've been working a lot with inspiring stuff connected to the vegetarian, and also make sure that all the food vendors have vegetarian options, which is super important. So I think there we reached about 55 to 60% of vegetarian as a whole. And it's also important to lift up the vegetarian, because it might not be a norm to eat vegetarian, so it's important to actually make it look better. It's even there. It's about communication. Whoever who don't really like a pizza margarita, for example, and you don't need to brand that as vegetarian, but it still lowers the impact from the meat. But in terms of Way Out West, I think it's super important. What they did, as you mentioned, was that they took away all the meat. So it's a totally vegetarian festival, which kind of made a lot of people react, both positive and negative. And it's a huge music festival with up to 35,000 guests. And I think what they did might seem radical, but what they did was actually to image themselves, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're still relevant, because they show that there is another way of doing it, and people love it. Even though some people think that, okay, I would like my meat, I eat meat. What they did was that while doing that, they tried to change people's behavior, and they made it as an important discussion point. And whatever happened, again, to the change maker thing, how much does people afterwards discuss about the vegetarian and why they did it? And that kind of starts a movement, I think is super important.
So food and drinks is one important area that we focus on together with our partners, like Way Out West. Switching from a lot of meat products to less meat products, for instance, is one way.
Yeah.
But we have done other things as well when it comes to climate action.
Yeah.
I know we have a list in the background here. I would know that we have done things with staff uniforms,
Yeah.
cutlery, and all that. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Of course, I think climate action is still a very abstract term for a lot of people, but it's actually it's all about lowering the consumption of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think lowering the transportation is just one very simple thing. And as I mentioned earlier, I think the energy is also something. If you can drive the whole event with clean energy, I think that makes a lot, because everyone knows that a food vendor that deep frying stuff is a lot of energy, and if that can be clean, it's important. But I think I think one way is definitely to just buy less stuff, and I think in terms of events, there are a lot of merch and all that stuff, so that's very good. But in terms of clothing, I think we try to make an example to inspire other actors. So let's take it from the beginning. We started with just ordering clothes, and the first thing I would say with clothing, you should try to buy organic stuff and fair trade stuff, which is just an important way of kind of working with climate and environmental stuff. And the next step is definitely to take away dates, because if you have the year on the clothing, you need to throw them away and then order new, which is definitely also an economical way of thinking of it. But I think what we did is maybe beyond the next step, and that was actually to make a cooperation with a second-hand company that sorted out old used clothing and printed our logos on. So that was definitely no climate impact at all. So I think that's very good. But I would like to mention also what we've been working on a lot in Sweden is the free tap water to all visitors. We've been having festivals with up to 1.5 million visitors, and just to offer them free tap water is super great climate action, because you don't necessarily have to order water from a far distance, but we all seen conferences having Fiji water and stuff like that, and just the reason to transport water when you have great water on the premises is actually just something very easy to do.
So in practice, the visitors bring their own bottle, and they fill it from taps that we supply.
That we supply and have it very visible in the city. Yeah, exactly.
Great. Little tips and tricks how to do things, and I know that you wanna share with us some short tips where to start,
of course,
and how to move on.
I think the first thing that you need to understand when you make an event is to set up clear environmental and sustainability goals. I think that has been the one driver for us, which is super important. And once you have the goals, it's very easy to evaluate and try to work and integrate them into your business. So I think that's the first I would like to mention. I think as a second thing, I would definitely say to work in climate goals. I think that climate, or I know that climate is as I said earlier, kind of abstract. But it's starting to get easier, and to align with Paris Agreement and to always lower. It's actually not that hard. You just decide to fly less, transport less meat. It's easy to set up a few. It doesn't necessarily have to be scientific, but those things you already know. And as a third tips, I would definitely say to integrate sustainability more into your DNA.
Yeah.
Make it as like Way Out West. I think that's a perfect example where you actually see that as a driver, as an image carrier, and make it fun. I think that's important. And also in terms of even there, I think Way Out is a perfect example. Be brave and be bold and inspire and let bold ideas become a part of your business as well. I think many festivals and events are a bit nervous about it, but I think in terms of customer or visitor, I think they will love it in the end. I think that's what we've been seeing for sure. And I think maybe the last tips is definitely to integrate this heavily in your communication. Keep communicating about it, because that raises awareness, and again, see events as a change maker. And if you're going to see it as a change maker, the visitors is whoever you want to inspire and whoever you want to work with. Of course, also the participants and all of that. But I think integrate everyone and communicate heavily about this. I think that's the way to do it.
And I think this list is great, because as a manager, I see a lot of benefits from it. You need to anchor your philosophy, your policy within the whole company to start with. You need to be bold, or you need to dare, you need to try.
Yeah.
You will fail over and over again, but you may fail 9 times, and the 10th time it's a big success.
For sure. Yeah.
And of course, you need to have fun. Sustainability is fun, and changing the world to the better is fun.
For sure.
So every little step we can take together from this list and make it reality is, of course, a step in the right direction.
I agree, for sure.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you very much. Always nice to be able to inspire.
Well done, sir. A lot of useful tips and tricks from Gothenburg. And thank you for listening. We hope that we have inspired you to do differently and to do better. Small steps every day towards a more sustainable future. In Gothenburg, we're not perfect. We haven't reached our goals yet, but we try every day. And we fail every day. And perhaps that's one of the big takeaways. You have to try, and finally you will succeed. And please take with you that sustainable actions is fun. It can be fun. And if you want to discuss it even further, please feel free to reach out and contact Philip or myself. We would love more events. We would love more destinations that focus on sustainability. And we would love to share with you even more tips and tricks. Stay safe, and thank you.
Zdaj se nam bo pa preko videokonference pridružil Filip in bo nekaj minut časa za kakšna vprašanja. Če boste pa imeli več, sta pa oba dva rekla, da sta pripravljena tudi kasneje zbrati vprašanja in jih odgovoriti po konferenci preko e-pošte. Hello, Filip.
My name is Katja. My question would be, how did you send your message about sustainability to the decision makers? Because as I see it, is the big challenge to succeed with the decision-making process, so they understand that these are necessary steps.
Okay, if I repeat the question was about the decision-making process, and how do you convince the decision makers in this process about your sustainability agenda?
Wow, big question. I would say it's of course different, because we both have the event organizers, which is one part here, and some of them are actually governmental funded, and then of course we are also from the government. So we have decisions from the politicians, which is of course super and a bit easier. So it kind of depends on from what perspective. Was the question from the perspective it's an organizer that is private funded, or?
Yes, that was the idea. Organizer that is privately funded.
Okay, so yeah, again, I just it's hard for me to answer in your from your perspective. I would say that in terms of getting government funds and everything, I think making the decisions will definitely make it easier for you in the long term to adjust to a certain sustainability level that's in a EU level what they want to say, if I can say like that. I don't know if that answers your questions exactly, but
I think we take the next question. Yeah. I think there was a thumbs up here.
Yeah, good.
Torej, vprašanje je bilo, kako pa prepričamo odločevalce za našo trajnostno agendo, in Filip je rekel, nam je malo lažje, ker smo del nekakšnih teh državnih inštitucij in imamo tudi politično agendo na Švedskem, pa gre vse v to smer. Medtem ko pri zasebnikih pa, kakor ni imel tako enostavnega odgovora, pač pa vendarle, da si narediš nek plan, kot je že tudi malo prej rekel, da si postaviš neke cilje. Čeprav vprašanje je bilo bolj, kako prepričati tiste, tukaj nismo čisto polnega odgovora dobili. Pavlo, pa tukaj še eno vprašanje.
Hello, Philip. My name is Lydia. So my question is, how do you handle the waste on these really huge events, like when there are tens of thousands of people? Is plastic totally forbidden, or how do you handle this? Because this I see here is still a problem. Thank you.
Could you hear the question, Philip, or shall I repeat?
Repeat, please.
Okay, the question is about waste at very big events, so events with 10,000 people or more, and how do you handle that waste? Do you forbid completely plastic? Some ideas about this issue.
I think in general terms, from an organizer perspective in Gothenburg, we have quite a big organization that helps also from the city. So I think the question in terms of waste is that it's organized that the city helps, or at least, I mean, sometimes the events organizer, of course, have to pay for it, but we have the infrastructure for it. So you get help from the city to actually arrange with bins, and at the same time, you also demand that you can't use too much waste. So it's about both ways here. The city helps with the infrastructure to actually handle all the waste, and then that's a big help from the city, even though it sometimes again costs money. But then also, as an event organizer, you demand and you organize yourself with the structured work to actually lower the amount of waste each year. So we've been working a lot with that. So for one, we sort out everything that we can, and we forbid some plastics, of course, in relation to all our projects there with the disposable free, and also paper in some terms. And then also we every year try to lower the amount of waste in relation to each participant of the. So if it's 1 million visitors, which in some cases we have, then we try to lower per gram on each visitor, and that's and you do that with the structured work for several years. But start drawing up goals and then try to work against them, and also cooperate with the cities with the infrastructure.
Vprašanje je bilo, kako ravnati z ogromno količino odpadkov, ki nastane zlasti ob zelo velikih dogodkih. Njegov odgovor je bil dobro na dveh ravneh. Eno je, zelo aktivno sodelujemo tudi z mestom in infrastrukturo, ki jo imajo, tako da imajo tudi dovolj košev in vsega, da v enaki meri, ali pa še bolj pomembno pa je, da seveda strateško zmanjšujejo porabo in da to delajo pač te načine, da si tudi cilje postavijo na udeleženca, dobesedno po gramih, kako najprej zmanjšati porabo, pa tudi potem kako imeti čim manj zlasti tiste plastike in namesto tega imeti druge materijale in da se to pač iz leta v letu si višajo cilje in delajo bolj proaktivno proti temu. Good enough. Zadnje vprašanje, evo tukaj na sredini.
Hvala lepa. Hi Philip, my name is Bastian. One of the topics which we are discussing today is food. And as we know, in the total amount of the event, food represents quite a big amount of the carbon footprint. And on the other hand, I can see that there are lots of calculators which are easy to find around the world to measure the transportation carbon footprint. And on the other hand, I don't see many opportunities to measure pretty much precisely the food carbon footprint. So what is your idea about it? Which measurements are you using? And at the end, are you doing any kind of offsetting of those carbon footprints connected with the food? Thank you.
Okay, just very quickly, the question was about monitoring emissions from food. For transport, we have good calculators. For food, we don't so much. So how do you calculate that? And then at the end, after the event, whether you offset the emissions from the event and from food in particular.
So to start out with the first part of the question, we have in fact a few systems in Sweden which are very particular in terms of even food here, and I think they are reachable even from a global perspective. Even though I know that some events have been using those because they are kind of detailed, but I think in general terms, I would say that my biggest tips here would be to catch the terms that you can easily see. I mean, for example, meat, you know for a fact that meat is a higher impact. So start with whatever is easy to understand and easy to draw up rules with, and then let the calculation come afterwards. I think a lot can be done with just deciding that try to lower. For example, in years we just decided to fly less, for example, and that was so easy. We didn't need to calculate that, and we made progress even without that. But as I said, I think also there are some systems, and I think there will be even more in the upcoming years for sure. But again, I think much can be done without it. And as your other question about the offset, I think the most important thing here is to actually lower the impact we have, maybe not to offset. Of course, offset is also a way to handle it, because if you always have to pay for the offset, that will give you an incentive to lower, so that could be a good way to work. However, from my part of perspective, we are governmental funded. We are not allowed to make offset because the tax money should go to other stuff. But I think. But again, I think if you find out a good way to use the offset, I think you should. But lowering is definitely the most important thing here, and I think that's a good focus.